The art of rhythmical composition written or spoken for exciting pleasure by beautiful, imaginative, or elevated thoughts is what is known to be as poetry. Hello, my dear friends and esteemed scholars. Welcome to the third edition of Poets Talk About Poets, Songs of India. This program has started in the last month, 7th of September, in the honor of Jayanta Mahapatra. The basic idea of this program is to highlight Indian language poets and their contribution to the realm of literature, and particularly in the influence they left in the society. And four of our esteemed panel members, will be presenting or talking about their poets of their particular choice, and each participant member will be given 15 minutes. In the last episode, which was held on 21st of September, Dr. Hasina Sultan talked about Hiran Bhattacharya hailing from Assam, and Dr. Poonam Sood talked about Amrita Pritam. Major Dr. Muhammad Ali Shah talked about Mirza Ghalib, and last Miss Satinder Kaur talked about well-known poet, a female poet hailed from Kerala, who is known to be as Kamala Das. So today's episode, and our esteemed panelists like Squadron Leader Toolika Rani would be talking about Sachchidananda, Hirananda, Vatsyayan. Hindi poet Dr. Pragya Bajpai would be talking about an English poet, Nissem, Ezekiel. Miss Shubha, Hariharan, Narayanan would be talking about, revered poet Kalidasa in Sanskrit, who written. And Dr. Tejawani Patel, Dange ma'am, would be talking about a Marathi poet, Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar. I would now request our esteemed, moderator, and she's a scholar and a retired professor of Delhi University, Dr. Rupali Sarkar ma'am, to begin. Thank you.
Good evening, friends who are poets and scholars, and we're looking forward to learning so much this evening. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to start with Squadron Leader Toolika Rani. Squadron Leader Toolika Rani, I'm very proud to have you here today. It gives me always pride when I see a female woman, a veteran, and also a poet and a writer. And she's an Everester. She has climbed Everest, and she'll be climbing one of the world's highest volcanoes very soon. She's a mountaineer who has successfully climbed Everest. She's a TEDx motivational speaker and academic, a bilingual published poet and author whose books have just recently come out. She will talk to us about the renowned Gyanpith awardee Hindi poet Hirananda Vatsyayan Agyeya. So go ahead, Toolika, and let's hear you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My warm good evening, greetings of the day to anybody who is watching us through this platform, the Fertile Brains. My gratitude to Ma'am Rupali Sarkar Gaur for giving me this opportunity to talk about this esteemed poet, Sachchidananda Hiranand Vatsyayan Agyeya. I know Pragya ma'am also here, Narayanan ma'am, very pleased to meet you. Prasanna, of course, it's my pleasure to meet you too. And since these are poets talking about poets, this event becomes highly relevant and interesting to me. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Coming to the poets now, Agyeya एक ऐसे कवि रहे जिनकी कविता मैंने 12वीं क्लास में पढ़ी थी, और तब से वो कविता मेरे साथ मेरे जीवन का पथ प्रशस्त करती रही। हिंदी में हम बोलेंगे क्योंकि उनको हिंदी के कवि के रूप में जाना जाता है। अगेय एक हिंदी कवि में पायनियर माने जाते हैं, पथ प्रदर्शक माने जाते हैं, और स्पेशली जिसे हम कहते हैं नई कविता, जिसे हम कहते हैं मॉडर्न हिंदी लिटरेचर, मॉडर्न हिंदी पोएम्स, उसके पायनियर माने जाते हैं अगेय। और एक नई विधा की शुरुआत उन्होंने की जिसे हम कहते हैं प्रयोगवाद, एक्सपेरिमेंटलिज्म इन इंडियन पोइट्री। तो जब मैंने इनकी पोएम पढ़ी थी, मुझे इनके विषय में इतना इस तरह का ज्ञान नहीं था कि वो किस विधा में लिखते हैं, सिर्फ जो उनकी पोएम थी मैंने आहुति बनकर देखा, जिस पोएम को आज हम, जिस कविता का आज हम विश्लेषण यहाँ करेंगे, वो कविता मेरे जीवन में मुझे हमेशा, जब भी विपत्तियां आई, जब भी एडवर्स कंडीशंस आई, हमेशा मेरा संबल बनी रही है, हमेशा मुझे इतना साहस देती रही, ओज से भरपूर करती रही। और जब मुझे ये मौका दिया गया रूपाली मैम के द्वारा कि मैं चुनूं किसी एक कवि को, तो स्वतः ही मेरे दिमाग में अज्ञेय जी का नाम आ गया और वो कविता आ गई, मैंने आहुति बनकर देखा। तो किसी भी कवि का या किसी भी रचनाकार का जो व्यक्तित्व होता है, जो उसकी रचनाएं होती हैं, हमेशा उनके अपने जीवन से भी कुछ कुछ प्रभावित रहती हैं। जिस तरह से उनका जीवन रहा होता है, उस पर बहुत प्रभाव डालता है कि उन्होंने क्या रचनाएं लिखी, क्या बात उन्होंने इस दुनिया में ऑब्जर्व की। तो अज्ञेय के विषय में अगर देखें तो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग जीवन काल रहा। छोटा सा मैं 2-3 मिनट में उनके जीवन के विषय में परिचय दूंगी और उसके बाद उनकी जो कविता हमने देखी है, मैंने आहुति बनकर देखा, उसका विश्लेषण करेंगे। तो इनका जन्म हुआ 1911 में उत्तर प्रदेश के कुशीनगर, जो आज का है, कासिया उस समय कहते थे, वहां पे इनका जन्म हुआ। इनके पिताजी आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट थे, तो स्वाभाविक है कि आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट पिता के पुत्र को इतिहास का ज्ञान अपने आप ही था। पिताजी संस्कृत के स्कॉलर भी थे, तो उस वजह से उनको संस्कृत भी सिखाई गई। Then his father also taught him English. So he was a multilinguist. He knew Persian because Persian भी उन्हें सिखाई गई उनके घर में एक मौलवी के द्वारा। संस्कृत उनको पिताजी ने भी सिखाई और पंडित ने भी सिखाई एक, प्लस हिंदी उन्होंने सीखी, बांग्ला उन्हें सिखाई गई। तो इतनी भाषाओं का ज्ञान रखते थे अज्ञेय जी। फिर उन्होंने जो ग्रेजुएशन की साइंस सब्जेक्ट्स में की, मैथ्स, फिजिक्स और केमिस्ट्री। प्लस इंटरेस्टिंग बात आप ये देखिए, साइंस सब्जेक्ट्स के साथ साथ उन्हें लिटरेचर का शौक हमेशा रहा। और आज जो हम उन्हें जानते हैं अज्ञेय जी को, एक हिंदी कवि के रूप में जानते हैं। तो वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग हिज लाइफ जर्नी हैड बीन। He was also revolutionary. In addition to being a poet, a writer, an essayist, an editor, he was also a freedom fighter. हमने HSRA का नाम सुना है, भगत सिंह का नाम सुना है। भगत सिंह की सहायता करने के आरोप में, कि जो भगत सिंह जेल में थे, उनकी सहायता करने की कोशिश हो रही थी कि जेल से उनको निकाला जाए, और इस आरोप में अज्ञेय को 4 साल की सजा हुई 1930 से लेकर 1934 तक। Now look at his creativity. While being in the jail, he started writing poetry. और उन्होंने वहां से तार सप्तक लिखा, उन्होंने वहां एक कहानी लिखी, 7.5 कहानियां लिखी उन्होंने, 7.5 कहानियां। अब जेल में थे अज्ञेय जी, उन्होंने जैनेन्द्र कुमार को भेजी 7.5 कहानियां अपनी छपने के लिए। जैनेन्द्र कुमार ने उन्हें प्रेमचंद को भेजा, जिनको हम सब जानते हैं। प्रेमचंद ने उसमें से 2 कहानियां सिलेक्ट भी कर ली, लेकिन बात आई कि जो व्यक्ति जेल में है उसका अपना नाम नहीं लिखा जाना चाहिए, तो इसलिए अज्ञेय मतलब अज्ञात, अननोन, एक उनको उपनाम दे दिया गया। इस तरह से अज्ञेय का उपनाम उनको मिल गया। उन्हें हालांकि बहुत पसंद नहीं आया उस समय पे, लेकिन अब कोई चारा नहीं था क्योंकि वो जेल में थे उसमें। और उसके बाद आके उन्होंने लिटरेचर की फील्ड में बहुत काम किया, कई सारी पत्रिकाओं का संपादन उन्होंने किया। उन्होंने पोइट्री एंथोलॉजी निकाली तार सप्तक नाम से, और फिर उसका प्रथम सप्तक, दूसरा सप्तक, तीसरा सप्तक प्रकाशित नहीं हुआ तीसरा, लेकिन वो भी उन्होंने निकाला। तो ये जो सप्तक थे, इसमें जो जिन कवियों की उन्होंने कविताएं छापी थी एंथोलॉजी में, उसमें एक नई शैली पोइट्री की हमें देखने को मिलती है, जिसे हम कहते हैं प्रयोगवाद, एक्सपेरिमेंटलिज्म। एक्सपेरिमेंटलिज्म का मतलब ये हुआ कि अभी तक की जो हिंदी कविताएं चलती आ रही थी, वो थी या तो छायावाद में, जिसमें महादेवी वर्मा और जयशंकर प्रसाद जी हुआ करते थे, या पंत हुआ करते थे, या फिर उसके बाद प्रगतिवाद, जिसमें निराला हुआ करते थे और बाकी कई सारे लोग, शिव मंगल सिंह सुमन। फिर बाद में प्रयोगवाद आया, जिसमें कि कोई भी चीज छूटने ना पाए, छोटी से छोटी भी, और सिंबल्स के द्वारा उसको मनुष्य के भावों को व्यक्त कर दिया जाए। इसमें अज्ञेय ने बिल्कुल लीड ले ली, इसको उन्होंने इस्टेब्लिश कर दिया। अब इनकी जो पोइट्री की बात, हम इसे देखेंगे कि क्या है वो, एक्सपेरिमेंटलिज्म है क्या। तो जो मैंने कविता चुनी है उनकी, मैंने आहुति बनकर देखा, इसको मैं रिसाइट भी करना चाहूंगी यहाँ, और इसको थोड़ा थोड़ा व्याख्या करना चाहूंगी। लाइनें सुनिए। मैं कब कहता हूं जग मेरी दुर्धर गति के अनुकूल बने, मैं कब कहता हूं जग मेरी दुर्धर गति के अनुकूल बने, मैं कब कहता हूं जीवन मरो नंदन कानन का फूल बने। इतनी सुंदरता इन लाइनों में है। और सिंबलिज्म फिर से देखिए, कवि ये कह रहा है, वीर रस की कविता, ओज इसमें आपको देखने को मिलेगा। मैं ये नहीं कहता कि जग मेरी दुर्धर गति, यानी जैसा मेरा जीवन शैली है उसके अनुकूल जग बन जाए, ऐसा मैं नहीं चाहता। नहीं मैं ये चाहता हूं कि जीवन मरो, यानी कि जीवन जो रेगिस्तान जैसा है मेरा, मैं नहीं चाहता कि वहां पुष्प खिले। मैं अपने दुख और पीड़ा में ही संतुष्ट हूं। आगे की लाइनें, कांटा कठोर है तीखा है, इसमें उसकी मर्यादा है। कांटा कठोर है तीखा है, इसमें उसकी मर्यादा है। मैं कब कहता हूं वह घटकर प्रांतर का ओछा फूल बने। वाह, कांटा जैसा भी है उसकी मर्यादा है। उन्होंने ये कहा कि प्रकृति में जो चीज जैसी है, इसको हम इंसान पे भी लागू कर सकते हैं। जो जैसा है उसमें उसकी मर्यादा है, डिग्निटी है, वो वैसे ही यूनिक है, उसको वैसे ही रहने दिया जाए और कंपैरिजन ना किया जाए। एक कांटे को फूल से कंपेयर ना किया जाए। और इन कंपैरिजन अगर देखते हैं तो फूल को प्रांतर का ओछा फूल कह रहे हैं, और कांटे की मर्यादा है कि वो तीखा है। आगे की लाइनें सुनिए, मैं कब कहता हूं मुझे युद्ध में कहीं न तीखी चोट मिले। मैं कब कहता हूं प्यार करूं तो मुझे प्राप्ति की ओट मिले। कह रहे हैं कि युद्ध हो तो मुझे नहीं चाहिए कि मुझे कोई चोट लगे ही ना। युद्ध हो, जीवन का समर हो, रण हो, तो चोट लगना स्वाभाविक है। और जो कवि है अज्ञेय, उसको नेचुरल मान रहे हैं कि चोट तो लगेगी ही जीवन के रण में। वो ये भी कह रहे हैं कि अगर मैं किसी को प्यार करूं तो मैं नहीं चाहता ऐसा कि मुझे निश्चित रूप से एक रेसिप्रोकेशन भी मिले वहां से। आज की जो पीढ़ी है उसे बहुत अज्ञेय को पढ़ने की आवश्यकता है। जब हम किसी को प्रेम करते हैं, जरूरी नहीं है कि उसमें रेसिप्रोकेशन हो। प्रेम स्वतः ही है, और प्रेम आप करते हैं, अगर आपको उसमें वापसी की चाह है तो वो प्रेम नहीं है। दूसरे से प्रेम नहीं, स्वतः से प्रेम हो सकता है, स्वयं से प्रेम हो सकता है। तो आगे की लाइनें, मैं कब कहता हूं विजय करूं मेरा ऊंचा प्रासाद बने। मैं कब कहता हूं विजय करूं मेरा ऊंचा प्रासाद बने, या पात्र जगत की श्रद्धा की मेरी धुंधली सी याद बने। विजय अगर हमारी हो तो कवि कहते हैं कि हम ये ऐसी आशा नहीं रखते कि हमारे ऊंचे ऊंचे महल बनाए जाएं, कोई बिल्डिंग्स बनाई जाएं, इमारतें बनाई जाएं हमारे नाम पे, ऐसा नहीं चाहिए। और हमें ये भी नहीं चाहिए कि जग मुझे याद रखे। मतलब मेरा कर्म है कर्म करते जाना। कवि का ये कहना है कि हमारा कार्य है कर्म करते जाना। गीता की झलक आपको यहाँ देखने मिलेगी। और वो कहते हैं कि चाहे लोग मुझे याद रखें या ना रखें, जैसे कि वो एक गाना मुझे यहाँ याद आ रहा है, मैं पल दो पल का शायर हूँ ना, तो मुझसे आगे और भी अच्छे आएंगे, मुझसे पहले और भी लोग अच्छे आगे चले गए। अज्ञेय जी भी वहां पे कुछ ऐसा ही कह रहे हैं कि हम नहीं चाहते ऐसा कि हमारा जो पात्र जगत की श्रद्धा की मेरी धुंधली सी याद बने। याद ना भी रहे जगत को तो भी ठीक है। पथ मेरा रहे प्रशस्त सदा, क्यों विकल करे यह चाह मुझे। नेतृत्व न मेरा छिन जावे, क्यों इसकी हो परवाह मुझे। मैं प्रस्तुत हूं चाहे मेरी मिट्टी जनपद की धूल बने। मैं प्रस्तुत हूं चाहे मेरी मिट्टी जनपद की धूल बने, फिर उसी धूल का कण कण भी मेरा गतिरोधक शूल बने। आप इसमें सिंबॉलिज्म देखिए। वो कहते हैं कि अगर मेरा नेतृत्व छिन भी जाए तो मुझे उसकी कोई परवाह नहीं है। आज के पॉलिटिशियंस, I think अज्ञेय को पढ़ लेना चाहिए। So a leader is never concerned and bothered about that whether they will be remembered or not, whether they will retain their power or not. What they must be concerned about is their action, their policies, and whether world remembers them or not, that's secondary. और वो ये भी कहते हैं कि मैं प्रस्तुत हूँ, चाहे मेरा अस्तित्व धूल जैसा ही बन जाए मेरी मातृभूमि के लिए, मैं प्रस्तुत हूँ। और वो विपत्ति में भी प्रस्तुत हैं। वो ये कहते हैं कि अगर उस धूल का कण कण भी मेरे रास्ते में बैरियर बन जाए, ऑब्स्टिकल बन जाए, देयर आल्सो इट इज नो प्रॉब्लम। अपने जीवन का रस देकर जिसको यत्नों से पाला है, क्या वह केवल अवसाद मलिन झरते आंसू की माला है। जो मैंने जीवन बनाया है इतने मुश्किल से, वो सिर्फ आंसू की तरह झर जाने के लिए नहीं है और डिप्रेशन में चले जाने के लिए नहीं है। वे रोगी होंगे प्रेम जिन्हें अनुभव रस का कटु प्याला है। ब्यूटीफुल लाइन्स। वे रोगी होंगे प्रेम जिन्हें अनुभव रस का कटु प्याला है, वे मुर्दे होंगे प्रेम जिन्हें सम्मोहनकारी हाला है। मैंने विदग्ध हो जान लिया, अंतिम रहस्य पहचान लिया। मैंने विदग्ध हो जान लिया, अंतिम रहस्य पहचान लिया, मैंने आहुति बनकर देखा, यह प्रेम यज्ञ की ज्वाला है। लव जिसके कॉन्सेप्ट्स को आज दुनिया भर में सिखाने के लिए साइकोलॉजिस्ट की बात होती है, ही सेज कि जो लोग प्रेम को नकार देते हैं पूरी तरह से कि ये तो आपको बेहोश कर देती है, आपको दुनिया में होश नहीं रहता किसी चीज का, वो गलत है, वो मुर्दे हैं एक तरीके से। प्रेम कोई अल्कोहल जैसी चीज नहीं जिससे नशा हो जाए। उन्होंने प्रेम की कितनी अच्छी संज्ञा दी, मैंने विदग्ध हो जान लिया, जब अपना सर्वस्व निछावर कर दिया, जब जल गए, जब हम आहुति बन गए प्रेम में, तो हमने ये पाया कि प्रेम यज्ञ की ज्वाला की तरह पवित्र भावना है जो आपको सोने की तरह तपकर निखारने के लिए काफी है। अंतिम लाइनें हैं अभी देखिए, मैं कहता हूं, मैं बढ़ता हूं, मैं नव की चोटी चढ़ता हूं। नाउ हियर यू सी ओज, जिसे हम कहते हैं वीर रस जिसे कहते हैं, जिससे कि सुन के पढ़ के जिन लाइनों को बिल्कुल ही अपने आप मोटिवेशन आ जाए, इंसान में इंस्पायर हो जाए। मैं कहता हूं, मैं बढ़ता हूं, मैं नभ की चोटी चढ़ता हूं, कुचला जाकर भी धूली सा, आंधी सा और उमड़ता हूं। यहाँ फिर से इन्होंने सिंबलिज्म का उपयोग किया है एक्सपेरिमेंटलिज्म के रूप में। धूल की कण जो है कुचला जाकर बार बार भी जैसे उमड़ता रहता है, वैसे इंसान को होना चाहिए, बार बार दबाया जाए, बार बार उठे। रिजन फ्रॉम द एशेस जैसे कहते हैं, फिनिक्स जैसे राइजेस फ्रॉम द एशेस। मेरा जीवन ललकार बने, ये इनकी 4 अंतिम पंक्तियां हैं इनकी इस पोएट्री की। मेरा जीवन ललकार बने, असफलता ही असिधार बने। मतलब जीवन, एग्जिस्टेंस इंसान का ऐसा होना चाहिए जो ललकार हो हर चुनौती के लिए, असफलता ही असिधार बने। जितनी बार हारे उतनी ही बार तलवार की नोक और ज्यादा असफलता ही उसको पैना करती रहे हमारी। इस निर्मम रण में पग पग का रुकना ही मेरा वार बने। निर्मम रण, अगर कितना भी क्रूअल इस दुनिया का एग्जिस्टेंस हो, समर हो, संग्राम हो, उसमें बेशक आप हर पग पे रुक रहे हैं, आपत्तियां विपत्तियां आ रही हैं, वही हथियार बन जाना चाहिए इंसान की क्षमता का और साहस का। मेरा जीवन ललकार बने, असफलता ही असिधार बने। इस निर्मम रण में पग पग का रुकना ही मेरा वार बने। भव सारा तुझ पर है स्वाहा, भव सारा तुझ पर है स्वाहा, सब कुछ तप कर अंगार बने। तेरी पुकार सा दुर्निवार, मेरा यह नीरव प्यार बने। अंतिम लाइन है। तो इसमें इस कविता में जो हमने देखा, जीवन का संघर्ष में किस तरह इंसान को डटे रहना चाहिए, असफलता उसको हतोत्साहित नहीं करनी चाहिए, उसमें उन्होंने प्रेम को भी संकलित कर दिया साथ साथ। तो 2 भाव हमें यहाँ देखने को मिले, एक तो है जिजीविषा, जूझने की क्षमता, और दूसरी देने की क्षमता प्रेम के रूप में। बेहद ही खूबसूरत ये कविता अज्ञेय के द्वारा, और मुझे अच्छा लगा कि आपने हमें मौका दिया कि हम इस कविता को यहाँ आज पाठ कर सके, विश्लेषण कर सके। धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, Toolika. I think, Prasanna, you have something to say about this wonderful presentation. Kahiye kuch?
It's remarkable.
Because I can understand how, I had never read him before. Pehle humne kabhi padha nahi inko. So thank you so much that through this, this is how this program is helping us learn. Because I've learned about, I know, this kind of revolutionary poets have always moved me, but I had never read Agyeya. And thank you so much for bringing him to us, Toolika. And you're the right person to have done it. You're the one who's climbing the Everest, and you're going to climb the volcano. What all kya karte hain aap?
My pleasure, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thanks to you.
And your wonderful poetry, your books are out. Thank you so much for introducing us to one of the great poets of this country.
Exactly, ma'am. Thank you. On that note, thank you, Squadron Leader Toolika Rani ji, and you made us, it was intriguing. I mean, you made us to flip those, books of honor, poet again.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So such a remarkable presentation. Let me take the honor of introducing our next panel member who will be talking about, Nissem Ezekiel. Dr. Pragya Bajpai is Assistant Professor of English and at prestigious National Defense Academy, Pune. A bilingual poet, author, and editor of a number of international anthologies. Pragya herself is a widely published poet. She is a graphic artist and has done number of book covers. She founded Ankahi, a platform to bring together and promote soldier poets from the armed forces. Today, she will be introducing us to, Nissem Ezekiel. Please welcome, ma'am. Mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Prasanna. And thank you so much to the Fertile Brains for having me. Thank you, Rupali ma'am. And it is such an honor and such a pleasure to be here and talking about such an esteemed poet. And good evening to all my fellow poets. Thank you, Toolika, for sharing such a beautiful poem. And it was a wonderful presentation too. I'm truly enlightened. So here I'm going to talk about the esteemed poet. We can say one of the founders of the Indian English, poetry in English, the one who has brought this gift to us, because of whom we are writing English poetry. And it is none other than Nissem Ezekiel, the one who possesses rare gift of idealizing and universalizing the ordinary and the commonplace in a very skillful manner, with such beautiful treatment that nobody else could have done better than him. The way he brings philosophy and spiritual themes together is truly an art to learn from, because there is something wonderful about him, that he has always avoided sentimentality and looseness of structure in his poems that gives it a unique quality. And his simple and direct expression brings that uniqueness and imparts certain new meaning to the poems. And Nissem Ezekiel, he has always endeavored to harmonize and combine the opposites. That is another beauty of his poetry. And opposites like religious and secular, love and sex, poetry and prayer are some examples that have made his poetry timeless. And his poetic standards are quite high and crafted so carefully that it remains with people who've read him. I've grown up reading him and getting inspired through him. So I know how it feels to talk about him before you. So that's how he has emerged as an eminent poet who is mature, who is thoughtful, and in every way has imparted the depth of meaning in a very artistic manner, in an excellent manner, with sheer honesty. And that makes him truly unique, because the authentic voice gives it certain strength, gives that art a beauty, which we cherish today. So before I begin talking about some of the favorite lines from his poetry, because it is not possible to do justice to such a great poet in such a limited time. So I'll be again beginning with few minutes to talk about his journey that made him the Nissem Ezekiel. So the making of Nissem Ezekiel goes like this, that he was a central figure in the cultural life of Mumbai, because of his works as poet, as editor, as critique, as a teacher who has influenced and inspired aspiring poets and writers alike. And he's the one who has helped shape the face of Indian poetry in English. He has published first few poems in some magazines while he was still a student, an undergraduate student, and then a graduate, postgraduate student, while he was studying in Wilson College in Mumbai. After his college, he started to work as a teacher, as a freelancer, and for Radical Democratic Party. But he eventually distanced himself completely from politics because he wanted to follow his passion for poetry and art. And imagine a person doing that without bothering about the consequences. I mean, some person who knows that there is something that he can do and he will do can only dare to do something like this. So he left everything and distanced from everything that he was doing only to pursue that passion for poetry. which truly inspires me. Later on, after some time, he moved to London with a friend who had insisted that he must come along. And that friend said that, I'll take care of your fare, you just come along. And that is how he moved from India to London, where he spent time reading in library of Indian House while he was working with internal affairs. There, during his tenure in London, he also attended some philosophy classes at the University of London. So he didn't waste a time, that is the level of inspiration that we draw from him today. So that is the point where his desire and his vocation to be a poet sprouted strongly, that he knew that he is going to make it today or tomorrow, sooner or later. And with that lot of perseverance and zeal and enthusiasm, he invested himself completely in reading, writing, living frugally as well. He mentioned in one of his autobiographical poems, and I quote, "Philosophy, poetry, and poverty, 3 companions shared my basement room." And thus, he actually, proved himself right. This eventually resulted in the manuscript that was accepted for publication for just £10 publication fee. And it was a prestigious press. And that is how his journey began. Soon after, he returned to India with great difficulty after spending like 2 months of sea travel. And when he came back to India, he was offered a job as sub-editor with the Illustrated Weekly, India. Thereafter, he worked with PEN, All India Center. And it was another, difficult journey. And he somehow began assisting the person who founded the organization, but ended up influencing it to an extent where he transformed it into meeting place for the new and established poets. And it still continues to be. For more than about 2.5 decades, he was also lecturer of English literature in Mitibai College in Mumbai. And he was head of the department as well. And it was through his activities as a literary editor, critique, book reviewer, and cultural organizer that he acquired the reputation in the canon of post-colonial Indian poetry in English. So later on in 1960s, he published 2 volumes of poetry collections and edited 5 books within a span of like 10 years. And then later on, another significant step in his life was moving from writer's workshop to prestigious Oxford University Press that published 4 poetry books. That was yet another achievement. He soon became the most interviewed poet in the canon. So imagine, the journey began slow, but it picked up pace very well. And, he strongly believed in something and it truly turned out to be true. And later on, he was awarded with Sahitya Academy Award in 83 for his first collection, a later collection called Latter Day Psalms. And then he was also awarded with Padma Shri in 88 for his overall contribution to Indian literature in English. Ezekiel was a poet who brought sense of discipline, self-criticism, and mastery to Indian English poetry. And he took it to the next level from a hobby to poetry as vocation to be pursued with, I'll quote, with craftsmanship and purposefulness. He's considered, not just like that, considered to be the founders of modern poetry in English. And we are proud of him, There are certain themes that he deals with. I cannot cover all of them, but I would definitely talk about a few. His poetry is peppered with religious overtones. There are imperative advice. There is call for renewal, regeneration, redemption, and so on and so forth. And all these things somehow defines his poetic quest. He talks a lot about Bombay, the then Bombay, because Bombay truly resided in his heart. So it was his hometown, and he viewed his hometown of Bombay as a metropolitan space to be lived and experienced and described, not only as a physical social environment, but also as a projection, or you can say a reflection of poet's mind. I would quote just 2 lines from a poetry that shows how he brings Mumbai to light. I quote, "Markets and courts of justice, slums, football grounds, entertainment halls, residential flats, places of art and business houses, basement poets, princes and fools," I unquote. So imagine the versatility of the place from his perspective, from his eyes. I mean, he's not left anything untouched in his poetry when he goes on to talk about Mumbai. So that is the level of his passion towards his hometown. And we all have that, and it's truly inspiring to see how with that keen eye, he hasn't missed a single detail while talking about Mumbai. Nissem Ezekiel's one of the collections called The Third, it shows some emphasis on an effort to analyze, scrutinize, and rationalize his own self from different angles and perspectives. And in one of the poems, which is again my favorite, and the title is "What Frightens Me?" And he says, "I have long watched myself remotely doing what I had to do, at times ashamed, but always rationalizing all I do. I have heard the endless silent dialogues between self-protective self and the self-naked. I have seen the mask and the secret behind the mask." So you see how skillfully he has constructed an identity, and he knows self so well. Isn't that inspiring to see, how much we are in a dire need to introspect, to look at ourselves from a perspective and create an identity which is true to ourselves. And I'm totally enamored by the way he has done it. So there is, in his self, there is both a project and a projection of self. And his poems, they point out a gesture of acceptance and a reconciliation through straightforward voice. Isn't that amazing about him? He was a poet of incredible observational skills paired with rich imagery. Social reality is one of the recurrent themes of his poetry, and his writing is a synthesis between the Jewish and the Indian, urban and the rural, Eastern and the Western, and so on and so forth. I'll give you an example, few lines from another poem from Latter-day Psalms, and I quote, "The images are beautiful birds, and colorful fish, they fly. They swim into my Jewish consciousness. God is a presence here, and his people are real. I see their sins, I hear their anger." So imagine how much he's connected with the nature that he's able to feel them. It's running under his skin, and there is so much consciousness that brings everything alive. And yet another example I would like to give before I sign off. His real poetry reveals reality of higher kind. And Ezekiel says, within quotes, "Through poetry, we experience a reality that is surely greater than the poetry. But then only great poetry can be a reality greater than life itself. Quotes close. And towards the end, he considered poetry as an integral part of life because he says that poetry is wedded to life. And I'll finish with a few lines, the last lines from yet another poem. And I quote, "A poem is an episode completed in an hour or two, completed in an hour or two, but poetry is something more. It is the way, the how, the what, the flow from which a person comes." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pragya. It was a wonderful exposition. My favorite poet, Nissem Ezekiel, and I'm sure the favorite of many of us. His poems are in all the textbooks, school textbook, college textbook. And I just wanted to say that he was so connected with this land that he wrote this, he was invited, I think, to be chair in one of the American universities. And he said that confiscate my passport, oh Lord. I don't want to go abroad. I want to sing my song where I belong. So since this program is about songs of India, I also want to mention something very personal, that how poetry and poets affect our lives and how Nissem Ezekiel affected mine, because his great poem, The Night of the Scorpion, in which a woman is, bitten, or lady is bitten by a scorpion on a wintry night, the raining night, and the last things when the poison is, getting into her blood. My mother only said, "Thank God the scorpion picked on me and spared my children." And this is what I said when I had an accident, which could have happened to my children because it was a construction part of my house from which I fell. And Shubha knows that. And these were the words that I said, and it came from Nissem Ezekiel. But thank God that, whatever happened, my children were spared. And this comes from The Night of the Scorpion. So that's what the mother's feelings are. Thank you so much today. It's been a wonderful evening. So we go to our next poet, Prasanna.
Subha,
Tell us
Subha.
more.
Yes, ma'am. So it's youth,
Yes. I said I'm going to introduce her. Okay. So here is Shubha Hariharan Narayanan, taught Sanskrit at Sri Venkateshwar College, Delhi University, before joining the civil services, the government of India. She has been an international civil servant with the United Nations, the multilingual poetry, the biodata, which we can't read today, take up all our time. So I had to compress it. Multilingual poet, scholar, academic, administrator with many degrees in financial management. Shubha Hariharan Narayanan is a published poet, novelist, author, and translator. Let me get my breath back. She is a scholar in Tamil literature, having translated 3 magnum opuses of Kalki Krishnamurti from Tamil to English. We are honored to have you speak today on Kalidasa, the legendary classical Sanskrit author who is considered ancient India's greatest poet and playwright. We are very, very happy to have you here today.
Ma'am, kindly unmute your mic.
Unmute.
Unmute your mic. Mike.
Unmute.
Is it audible now?
Yes.
Thank you, Rupali. We have grown up together. When I met you, you were only 25 years old. And we literally grew up together and sort of, it doesn't look as though 50 years have passed after that. So almost 50 years, not exactly 50, at least 40, 45 years. So I'm going to talk on a poet. When everybody talked on contemporary poets, I'm going to talk on a ancient poet, so ancient that the scholars differ as to which century Kalidasa belonged to. I mean, they place very loosely between 1st to 5th century. So I won't go into that because in 15 minutes, it's very difficult to talk about his history, his theme, his language, his literature. Why? I mean, it's just not possible to talk about really anything about except saying Kalidasa. I'll start with the stature of Kalidasa when oft quoted lines of Goethe. He summarized in 8 lines, but I read only the 4 lines because of the time constraint. Will thou, with one short word, encompass the earth and the heaven? All is said if I name only Shakuntala thee. Like he's a German novelist, playwright, and a philosopher, and he considered Shakuntala as the highest literary creation in the world. But surprisingly, in the 19th century, the British Raj banned teaching Shakuntala. I'm talking about Shakuntala because that's the most famous work of Kalidasa. And British Raj banned Shakuntala from being taught as a text in schools and colleges because the first Baron, Charles Trevelyan, he said that he declared this work to be marked with the greatest immorality and impurity. And I think everybody knows the story of Shakuntala. I'll just say it in one line. Shakuntala was an orphan baby who was found out by a sage and brought up in his hermitage. And she grows up in the hermitage, not exposed to any world except, she lives in the forest area. And the king, Dushyanta, comes hunting and enters the hermitage, and they meet and they fall in love. And they have this something called Gandharva Vivaha, which means in those days, I mean, like it's a marriage, two adults can marry without consent. There are 8 types of marriage, and one of them is Gandharva Vivaha. So they marry, and Dushyanta gives him an insignia ring to Shakuntala, and he says that he will call her after some time. After a couple of months, it's discovered that Shakuntala was pregnant, and her father is keen to send her to her husband's house. Meanwhile, while Shakuntala was lost in thoughts one day about Dushyanta, Sage Durvasa comes and she doesn't notice him, and he curses her that whoever she is thinking about will forget her. And her friends fall at his feet and request, and he says, okay, if she shows something, if he sees something which he can recognize, Abhigyana Shakuntalam. Abhigyana means recognition. So if he recognizes some object, then he will remember her. Shakuntala on the way loses the ring. And when she is presented in the before Dushyanta, he doesn't remember her. He says, who is she? I don't know her. I can't just accept a pregnant woman as my wife. And so then, of course, the story goes that, she is retrieved by her Apsara mother and put in another hermitage. And she's later on, a fisherman finds in the stomach of a fish the ring, and then he sees, and then they are reunited. This is the story. I've said it in one line only. But why is Shakuntala so famous and so beautiful literature is because Kalida is the Mahakavi of Mahakavis, and the language, his theme, his words, his choice of vocabulary, his presentation, his poetry, his emotions encompasses you literally. When you read Kalidasa, he has written several works. I'm talking just about Shakuntala. It really encompasses you, and I'll just because no reference and no talk about Kalidasa will be complete unless I quote at least a little verse from Kalidasa. And there is much before psychiatry or psychology or human emotions were even before people were even aware of these concepts. As I'm talking 1,000 years back, 1,500 years back, this one verse in Shakuntalam where for no reason Dushyanta is feeling despondent. And on that day, Shakuntala was about to be presented to him, but he doesn't know. She has not yet met her and repudiated her. But he somehow feels despondent. And this verse goes, Ramyani Vikshya, on seeing some beautiful things, and Madhurascha Nishamya Shabdan, on hearing something very melodious, Paryutsuki bhavati yat sukhitopi jantu. If a person who is otherwise feeling very happy, contented, relaxed, everything, suddenly feels agitated, and because for no reason he is not able to explain why he is feeling agitated. So that means tat chetasa smarati. He is remembering from his heart. Bhavasthirani, emotions installed, established, embedded in his heart, deep into his heart. Bhavasthirani, Jananantara Saugradani. So, Jananantara, from past births, from where something has gone into his subconscious. And when nobody thought of conscious, the concepts of conscious, unconscious, subconscious, all these things were not there. And Kalidasa has propounded this, that Ramyani Vikshya Madhurashta Nishamya Shabdan Paryutsuki Bhavati Yat Sukhitopi Jantu Tat Chetasa Smarati Noonam Abodhapurvam. Unconsciously he remembers Bhavasthirani Jananantara Sauradani. And this is one verse from Shakuntala which I have quoted, and every line of Kalidasa, not only in Shakuntalam, in each one of his epic writings, his poetry, his plays. He has written 3 plays and several kavyas, which are big poetry. So it's not like small poetry, it's the huge works, the epics, magnum opuses. So another tiny, it's called a Khanda Kavya. It's a small kavya, a small poem of Kalidasa, which is again very famous with people, is the Meghaduta. And Megha Sandesh, it's called, and Meghadutam, where Yaksha, who has been exiled by the king, and the king is in Alkapuri, you can place it somewhere near Mansarovar of today, and he's exiled to somewhere near, it's the geographically it is in Nasik, like Ramgiri. And so he is depressed, he is exiled, he was dereliction of duty, so he was exiled for a year. And he lives there all alone. It's like a solitary confinement somewhere on the hilltop. He is very unhappy, depressed, dejected, separated from his beloved. So one day he sees the monsoon has not yet started. So he sees a huge, thick, dense cloud floating. So he saw that the cloud was taking the northern direction. So the Yaksha tells him that, okay, you're going to the north, so please go to Alkapuri. Please go to my place where my beloved is pining for me, and give her a message that I am okay here. And so she should not, end her life thinking that something has happened to me. So go and console her and say that I am okay. You just convey to her my well-being here, so that she is at least feeling sort of, she should look forward to meet me in another few months' time. Now everybody thinks that this is the poem and this is the cloud went and cloud gave the message, but in the 4th verse itself, Kalidasa gives a disclaimer. He says, Dhuma Jyoti Salila Marutam Sannipata Kwamega. What is a cloud? It's only a conflagration of Dhuma, which is steam, Jyoti, fire or lightning, Salila, water, and Marut, wind. It's a conflagration of all these 4 things, 4 elements. And it's not sentient, it doesn't have any sense, how will it even listen to you about your message and then carry it and convey it? So Sandeshartha, anything which you want to convey, a message, So, Patukaranai, a person with all the sentient ability to cognition and understanding and talking and communication. Only Pranibhi Prapaniya, only such people can convey this message. But this man, out of his own despondency, suddenly looks at a cloud and is alone. So he tells it. Now, the entire Meghadutam is, the description of the route which the cloud should take. Like, you please start from here because it's in Nasik, above Nasik now. So you take this route and take a diversion towards Ujjain and please visit Mahakaleshwara, and then you go and there will be a mountain called Devagiri. Then there's something else will come. Then you go enter the Himalayan range, and then you cross. Then you go to the Mansarovar. There you will see Kalpataru and all those things, and because it's a divine celestial area. And then you go into Alkapuri, and how will you recognize my wife? Because she is the most beautiful on the earth, and so you will know that that's my wife. And that verse is also very famous. That how he would recognize his wife, and the wife is Tanvi. She's very slim, and Shyama. She's of a slightly dusky complexion. In those days, fair complexion was not the criterion for beauty. Shyama, Krishna is also Shyama. So she was slightly dusky complexion, because Indian complexion is not considered, so. Tanvi, Shyama, Shikhari Dashana. She has a row of very tiny, sharp teeth. Pakva Bimbada Roshti, her lips look like ripe fruits of what we call as kundru, like these days. Tanvi Shyama Shikhari Dashana Pakva Bimbada Roshti, Madhye Kshama, and very narrow waisted she is. And Madhye Kshama Chakita Harini Lochana, and she has eyes of a startled doe. So she's such beautiful, frightened eyes. She has Chakita Harini Lochana Nimna Navi, and she has very deep navel. And Shroni Bharad Alasagamana. She doesn't, rush around and walk in a boisterous manner, or she walks very delicately and daintily. Shroni Bharad Alasagamana Stoka Namra Sasanabhyam. She slightly stoops a little bit, and I don't know, in those days, due to Samudrika lecture, slightly stooping by women was considered. Women did not stand like that and go in those days. And so he describes her like that. And Ya Tatrasya Yuvati Vishaye, amongst women, she looks like Srishtira Devadatu. She looks like the first creation of Brahma. Brahma, whenever you create something first, you all your energy and thoughts and everything and put into it. And this is the kind of beauty which is given by Kalidasa. And Kalidasa is also very, very famous for description and similes. So I'll say one more verse from Meghaduta and I'll finish it, conclude it. So very difficult for me because brevity is not the soul of my wit. So anyway, so there's one verse. It's a very small verse. So he tells the cloud that while going, you will be crossing Kailasa. And in Kailasa, you will see the Shiva family. And Shiva family, Shiva is there, Parvati is there, Bhavani, she is there, and her son Kartikeya is there, and his peacock is there. So you go there and you sort of emit your thunders. When you start emitting your thunders, then normally in monsoon time, when there's thunder, the peacocks start dancing. So make the peacock dance, Kartikeya's peacock dance and then he describes how it should be. What is Parvati doing? Parvati, Jyotirlekha, and he describes actually the peacock. So Parvati, who is used to wearing a blue lotus on her ear, just to humor her son, is wearing a peacock feather from his peacock. So, and how does the peacock feather look? Jyotirlekha Balayi. It has rings of like fire on it. It's so beautiful. So Jyotirlekha Balayi Galita, which had fallen from the peacock, Yasya Bhagam Bhavani Premna, because of her love for her son, Putra Premna's Karne Karoti. She is putting it in her ear. And then the peacock is standing there and its eyes have become red. And why is it eyes red? Because when Shiva is having the moon on his head and the moonlight is directly falling on the peacock's eyes, so it's reflecting that light. So Dhauta Pangam Hara Shashi Rucha. Hara is Shiva, Shashi is moon. Dhauta Pangam, the corner of the eye is red. Dhauta Pangam Hara Shashi Rucha. Pavakestam Mayuram. Pavaki is Kartikeya. Kartikeya is the peacock, such a peacock. Pashtad Adrik Grahana Guruvir Garjitair Nartayeta. You please shout or emit your thunder so much, so loudly that Paschad Adri Grahana Gurvi, those should be majestic thunders that they get reverberated in the caves of the mountains. Paschad Adri is mountain, Grahana Gurvi, big, huge thunders. Garjitair Nartayeta, you make the peacock dance with your thunders. So this is one of the descriptions, one verse from the Meghaduta, which has 150 verses. So 2 verses from Kalidasa is not enough to know about Kalidasa. 15 minutes is not enough to know about Kalidasa. But this, I just had to compress everything like that. Thank you so much, Rupali, for giving this opportunity. And because I can talk about Kalidasa, I think after this meeting, I'll ring you up and talk about Kalidasa maybe. So much. I'm still, like at this age also, I'm a big Kalidasa fan.
Thank you so much, Shubha. This is, for us, and the purpose, you serve the purpose of our program because we have not heard this in Sanskrit. No? I taught it in, the first thing that I know of Shakuntala is a film. We Shantaram film. We hated it when we were young. Just dislike Dushyant and Shakuntala. But then when I taught Shakuntala, Abhigyanam Shakuntala in translation, I realized that, what you were saying now, how fine, especially the first, the opening story, part of the story, where Dushyant is with his courtiers rushing past the hermitage and chasing a deer. And the sages stop him and say, you cannot kill those deer. I mean, look at it. Then it was being written, that you can't hunt animals. You can't hunt them. And the power that the sages had, this thing. So I think that you have done us a great service today, Shubha, that we've heard Kalidasa as he wrote it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rupali. Thank you so much.
Let me take the moment of, recalling an incident. I mean, it's like Kalidasa's, it's a mega sentence with a great treatise. And I had the honor of, attending a seminar. I mean, it's like on Mega Shandesham or Megadut. It was for weekdays discourse, and it went each day 3 hours. And just imagine the only on Mega Shandesham or Megadut. For 7 days it held. And it was within 15 minutes, it is unmanageable. I mean, so you cannot, but that is, thank you, Narayanan ma'am. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And this is really enlightening.
Thank
And
you.
Pragya ma'am, you enamored us with your presentation. Yes. And now let me take the moment Dr. Our esteemed member, Dr. Tejawani Patel. Dr. Tejawani Patel is an award-winning published poet, well-known academician, and committed community worker. She is the founder director of International Journal of Creative Literature for Peace and Humanity. Today, she will introduce us to the Padma Bhushan Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar, Sirwadkar, renowned Marathi playwright, poet, short story writer, and Sahitya Academy Award and winner of Jnanapith Award. Tejaswini Patel. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasannaji. At the outset, I express my sincere gratitude to Fertile Brains to provide me this platform where I can express myself. and I can represent Maharashtra. And that is very much a privilege to me that I am talking about Kusumagraja or Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar, whom I have read since childhood. We have been taught many stories, stories, dramas, poetry, etc. Everything we had at every stage of life, every stage in education, we learned him. We not only learned, we just remember everything. Actually, we lived them, I can say. So I would like to present my presentation in three parts. First will be introduction to Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar, that is Viva Sirwadkar. Second part will be his influences on me, how he influenced me since childhood. And third part will be his poetry. Some of his poems I will recite and I would like to discuss. So first I would like to start about the life and works of Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar, um, who is also known as Kusumagraj. Kusumagraj is another name, pen name he took for poetry particularly. And Kusumagraj, Agraj means the elder one. So Kusum is younger sister. So he is Agraj to the sister. And so Kusum Agraj, that is Kusumagraj. So he took the name, pen name, and he wrote poetry. And Viva Sirwadkar is generally for his prose works, that is short stories, novels, and one-act plays, dramas, etc. So he is Sahitya Akademi Award winner in 1974. He won Danfit Award in 1987. He was awarded Padma Bhushan in 1991. And after his death, a new star in the galaxy was named as Kusumagraj to just commemorate his greatness. So it is his life, it is his greatness for us Maharashtrians that he just occupies the sky. He is the star in the sky to guide us anytime we need to. So his poetry is that much magnanimous for all of us. So in a career spanning 5 decades, starting in India's pre-independence era, he wrote 16 volumes of poems, 3 novels, 8 volumes of short stories, 7 volumes of essays, 18 plays, and 6 one-act plays. And he was recipient of the Sahitya Akademi Award, as mentioned before, for his play Nata Samrat, and then Padma Bhushan and Jnanpith Award all at home. He also served as the president of Akhil Bharatiya Marathi Sahitya Sammelan held at Margao, Goa in 1964. So he wrote extensively, and almost in all genres of literature he wrote. And all the works are so inspiring to the readers that without mention of Viva Sirwadkar, we can't move ahead. Marathi literature cannot be, just like we say that Shakespeare, without Shakespeare, English literature is nothing. Like that, without Viva Sirwadkar, we cannot go forward in Marathi literature. So he started his career in pre-independence period. He worked for all types of movements, social reform. And then he started writing early at his age. Many publishers came forward and published his poetry collections by their own without taking a penny from him, because they were very much influenced by his poetry. Then just I would, if I take the time to read out the titles, it will take too much time. So I'm skipping the names. So I would like to further tell that how I got influenced. The first poem I was taught in school was Garza Jai Jaikar, Krantica Garza Jai Jaikar. So this poem is a patriotic song, and that tells us the story of the freedom fighters who were convicted in the jails, and they are talking to the Mother Earth, Mother India, that we are ready to do anything. We are ready to face any type of torture by the Britishers, but for the sake of our mother. So we are sure that we are going to do something that the the motherland will be free because of our efforts. So he is very much passionate about the motherland. Another poem I came across and I was influenced by was his Pulambasache Garvagit. So that is a different poem, and that is motivational poem, we can say. In that poem, he says, I would like to read some of the lines in that. हजार जिव्हा तुझ्या गरजू दे प्रतिध्वनीने त्या समुद्रात डळमळू दे तारे विराट वादळ हेल कावू दे पर्वत पाण्याचे ढळू दे दिशा कोण सारे ताम्रसुरा प्राशून मातू दे दैत्य नभामधले दडू द्या पाताळी सविता आणि तयांची ही अधिराणी दुभंग धरणीला कराया कराया पाजळू दे पलिता. So he passionately tells the sea that we, the sailors, are not afraid of you. O sea, we are going to conquer you. We are going to go ahead. Because he says, ही स्वर्गातून कोसळलेला सूड समाधान मिळाया प्रमत्त सैतान जमवून मेळावे ताळांचा या दर्यावरती करी हे तांडव थैमान. I just, when I wrote one research paper on the poem, so I had another poem to be compared with this poem was by Harivansh Rai Bachchan, and it was Aaj Lehron mein nimantran. So in that poem he says, तीर पर कैसे रुकूं मैं आज लहरों में निमंत्रण. So similarly in this poem he says that the sea is so much wild, and he is on the shore. Actually what happened at that time, that someone wrote that he's afraid of the sea, and he said that you are coward. So he described the Tandava of the sea, the Tufan of the sea. And he says that, okay, no worries. But when we are the Navikas, we are the sailors, we take out our sail on the waves. We are not afraid of you. You may have your tufans, you may have your fiercing types of times there, but we will not be afraid of you. So he says, पदच्युता तव भीषण नर्तन असेच चालू दे फुटू दे नभ माथ्यावरती आणि तुटू दे अखंड उल्का वर्षावत अग्नी नाविका ना कुठली भीती. So sailor is afraid of nothing. Sailor is not afraid of the sea. So he further goes and says that, as we know, this poem can also be compared with Ulysses by Tennyson. So in that poem also he says that we are not afraid of the waves, we are not afraid of the tides. So he says further, he tells his fellow sailors that काय सागरी तारू लोटले परताया मागे असे का हा पुलाबना त्याहून घेऊ जळी समाधी सुखे कशासाठी जपावे पराभूत प्राणा. So he says that he tells them that have we left our sail in the sea just to return? No, we will not return. Let the sea take us to the bottom. Okay, no worries, but we will not return. What if, what is the, what he says that we are not going to return as defeated. So we are not going to accept defeat. We will prevail. And so in the end of that poem he says, कोट्यावधी जगतात जीवाणू जगती अनमरती जशी ती गवताची पाती नाविक आम्ही परंतु फिरतो सात नभाखाली निर्मितो नवक्षितिजे पुढती. So we, the sailors, we never get afraid of the sea, and we go ahead and ahead. And the last lines are generally used in all inspirational or motivational speakers, that अनंत आमची ध्येयासक्ती अनंत अन आशा किनारा तुला पामराला. So see, our dedication towards our goal in life is so high that it doesn't know limitations. Oh see, you have shores, we don't have. Our desires don't have any type of limitation. So we are going to conquer. That is our word. And so he gave such type of quotes for Marathi. Marathi speakers, Marathi inspirational speakers, everyone. So whoever who read Kusumagraj, he will be inspired to live a higher level of life. So even the concept of love he presented is different. He doesn't say that love is something going behind someone. No, he says that love is that, as we know by Shakespeare in Marriage of True Minds, we know that it is never altered. In the similar way, he says that love is not that. It should be like the straightforward, to be expressed in the eyes and the dialogue with the eyes, and it is a straightforward thing. So that is ultimate thing. In his opinion, love should be fearless. Love should be divine. It should be spiritual. And so in one of his poems, he says that he is telling his beloved, in one of his best poems, he says that there is another poem I have written in reply to that poem in English, in Marathi. So I don't have it now at hand, but I would like to quote some of the lines from that. He says that काढ सखे गळ्यातील तुझे चांदण्याचे हात, क्षितिजाच्या पलीकडे उभे दिवसाचे. So it is going to be dawn, we are going to face dawn. It will be light again. And so, oh beloved, let us get parted. Let us separate. And let us go away from each other. Because if people will look at us, they will tell us, they will call us to be, in his words, actually gunegar, ha shabd, this word he uses, that is actually criminals, but criminals of the social laws, in his opinion. So he says, but and he says it's his love is limited, or we can say in Marathi we call it is a sanyat type of love. ये संयत टाइप का लव है, प्यार है, कि जो सामाजिक बंधनों से बंधा हुआ है, उसके परे वो नहीं जाता. So ये that is this type of love. And further, there is one poem that I'm going to further read for you. It is a request from the motherland, India, or Mother India, towards her citizens. And what she says, she has requested, there are 10 stanzas, small stanzas, and it was written when Indian independence completed 50 years. So at the golden jubilee of Indian independence, he wrote that, पन्नाशीची उमर गाठली अभिवादन मज करू नका, मीच विनविते हात जोडूनी वाट वाकडी धरू नका. So I am Mother Earth, Motherland, Mother India. Now I am 50. So I come to you and I request you that don't just pray me, don't just bow to me, just do what thing you have to go on a straightforward way, honest ways. You have to live a good life. That is what, as a Mother India, I would like to request my citizens. सूर्यकुलाचा दिव्य वारसा प्रियपत्रांनो पुत्रांनो तुम्हा मिळे, काळोखाचे करुण पूजन गुबडांचे व्रत करू नका. So I'm requesting you that we are born in the inheritance. We have inheritance of the sun. We are so powerful. We are so we are the sons of the sun. So why should we go towards gubad, owls? That is here in another way, that owl is at night, in darkness it works, and so he uses it. So in this poem, in his 10 stanzas, he tries to tell that motherland requests nothing else but to live an honest and good life that will give dignity to her. Not only the bowings and words will do. So this way, there are so many things I would like to talk. I would have spoken about Nata Samrat and many other things, but with the time limit, I take your leave and I stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tejaswini. जितना आप तेजस्विनी है उतना आपने कविताएं भी वैसे ही पढ़े हैं. And as I said, you have introduced us to one of the great writers of Marathi literature, and there is such a lot of commonality I've seen today in many of the great poets, that they're all saying, even the poem that Toolika mentioned about Agyeya, that Ahuti, so that what love is all about, whether it's Kalidasa, whether it's Nissem, Ezekiel, whether it is, Shubha, that today we are talking about giving of ourselves, and not expecting of living lives very strongly, fighting against the difficulties and the fineness of thinking and the fineness of the thoughts of these great ones. They're not great for nothing. I think, Prasanna, you must be very happy today. You've heard some of the great speakers today. You have something to say, I'm sure.
Undoubtedly, ma'am. Undoubtedly, this evening is very memorable. That's the takeaway. I mean, so I would say, we got that. That is where we cannot thank the scholars that who attended. Taking their time and to present the tongue about Sachchidananda, Hirananda, Toolika, Rani ma'am, and Dr. Pragya Bajpai ma'am, talked about Nissem, and Shubha ma'am talked about Kalidasa, Tejawani ma'am talked about Vishnu Vaman Sirwadkar, and you cannot sum it up, but they managed to put it in a eloquent manner in 15 minutes. That is something great. You cannot be missed. So my dear friends, that is it for tonight, and we'll be catching up on October 19th with new set of poets talking about new scholars in the poets of their choice. So, and today we can conclude by thanking Narayanan ma'am, Tejawani Patel ma'am, and Pragya ma'am, and yes, Toolika Rani ma'am for presenting the poets of their choices. And we cannot have the words enough to thank you, but it's a time to leave. So I would like to take your permission. Thank you, ma'am. And you could, I think I
Yes,
could
thank
just
you so
rewind
much.
it, every time when I finish the program, and I also would request students to watch this program so that I could. It's a kind of seminar, so it is a kind of helpful for them to for me it is
Yes,
helpful. So
we'll go back and read now, things that we haven't read, the gaps in our learning, all that will now come back. We'll be reading these poets. Thank you so much. Wonderful introduction.
thank you.
And
Thank you so much.